Adolf Hitler had made no secret of his hatred for the Jewish people. It was stated that once Hitler achieved power, he would try to remove the Jewish people from Germany, as indeed he did on becoming Chancellor in 1933, enacting not only violence and intimidation towards the Jewish, but also legally preventing the Jewish people from any meaningful life inside Germany, forcing hundreds of thousands to leave their country in the 1930s. The Jewish people were legally prevented from all the provisions, and then in 1935 the Nuremberg laws were promulgated, defining who was Aryan and who was not. These laws actually forbade marriage or sexual relationships between Jewish and non-Jewish, codified as the law for the protection of German blood and German honor. But what about pre-existing marriages and relationships, and the offspring these unions had already produced before the laws came into effect? What was the children's status? The Nazis produced a complex series of classifications to cover all possible heritage cases, and applied them without regard to families. The children of two Aryan parents were considered German-blooded and received Reich citizenship. Those who were 1/8 Jewish, that is, had one Jewish great-grandparent, were likewise German-blooded. There then followed the classifications Michelin or mixed race. Mixed race to the second degree were those persons who were a quarter Jewish, having one Jewish grandparent. They could also have German citizenship. And finally, there was mixed race to the first degree, being half Jewish. These people would also be approved for German citizenship. Jews were defined as being 3/4 or completely Jewish, and were designated as race enemies and persecuted. Citizens had to obtain a German blood certificate, proving their racial and citizenship status. In this way, some families contained German citizens and Jews, and would split up as the persecution increased into World War II, and full Jews were sent to concentration camps. So it was that many Mischlinge, men who were half or quarter Jewish, ended up in military uniform during World War II. How many? Well, the figures are astounding. It has been calculated by historians that during World War II, about 100,000 soldiers were Mischlinge, and there were some very high-profile examples. Many of these men joined the armed forces because they did not consider themselves to be Jewish. Some cases show that men officially rejected their Jewish mothers and emphasized how German and Christian they were. Some came from families that had previously converted to Christianity for a lot of reasons and no longer identified as Jews. One of the most famous examples is that of Werner Goldberg, whose image was used by Nazi propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels as a part of a campaign under the title The Ideal German Soldier, not knowing that Goldberg was a Mischlinge, a man who had half Jewish ancestry. Goldberg's father had long ago converted to Christianity, so he could marry a Christian. Werner and his brother were baptized as Christians and did not even know of their father's Jewishness until he lost his job because of the Nuremberg laws. Werner was called up to service in the RAD, the Reichsarbeitsdienst, the Reich Labor Service, in 1938, and then served in the army during the invasion of France in 1940, where his image came to national prominence as part of recruiting campaign. But in April 1940, Hitler ordered that all Mischlinge of the first degree, that is men who were half Jewish, be expelled from the armed forces. This move would place a lot of soldiers in a difficult situation, and because of that, many people used powerful Nazi friends to have their racial certificates changed to allow them to remain as soldiers and protect themselves and their families from persecution. Werner Goldberg became a teacher for the Reich Committee for Labor Studies and managed to keep his father out of the clutches of the Gestapo. He and his father were the only members of their family to survive the war. Goldberg became a politician in West Germany after the war and died in Berlin in 2004, aged 84. Another high-profile case was that of Luftwaffe General Erhard Milch, who was also a Mischlinge, his father being a Jewish pharmacist. When the Gestapo began investigating Milch in the 1930s, his leader Hermann Göring became involved and stood by his subordinate. Göring produced an affidavit from Milch's mother, a non-Jew, that Erhard's real father was her own uncle. It was untrue, but who was going to argue with Hermann Göring? Milch was issued with a German blood certificate, showing him to be 100% Aryan. testimony of ancestors being more acceptable to the Nazi authorities than having Jewish ancestry. As Göring famously stated, "I will decide who is a Jew and who is not." Milch would go on to become a field marshal. In 1947, Milch was tried as a war criminal by the Americans for the ill treatment of forced labor and crimes against humanity, including the use of Jewish slave labor. He received a life sentence, later changed to 15 years imprisonment, but was released in 1954. He died in Düsseldorf in 1972. There were even some Mischlinge in the SS, where ancestral heritage was examined in great detail. Perhaps the most famous was the case of Hitler's driver, a member of his early bodyguard unit, Emil Morris, a close friend of Hitler's from the early days of Nazi movement. Morris was proved to have had a Jewish great-grandfather, though this would classify Morris as Reich citizen, as he had 1/8 Jewish ancestry under the Nuremberg laws. No Jewish ancestry was acceptable to the SS. This all came to light in 1935 when Morris applied to marry, he being required to furnish Himmler with a full family tree, as was the practice for the SS officers. Though Morris had been a party member since 1919, had taken part in the 1923 Beer Hall Rebellion. Himmler demanded his removal, but Hitler actively stood by Morris and remained in the SS. He would go on to serve as a Luftwaffe officer in World War II, as well as remaining an SS officer, reaching the rank of Oberführer. Post-war, Morris spent 4 years in labor camp. He died in Munich in 1972 at the age of 75.